Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a pretty fascinating and frankly alarming shift. We are looking at how blind digitalization, which was originally supposed to be just a simple tool to help deliver welfare, has basically morphed into a self-serving governing ideology all on its own. Using Indian examples like Aadhaar, AgriStack, and Ayushman Bharat, we're going to explore the deep societal challenges that pop up when technology suddenly becomes an end in itself. Here is a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll be covering the ideology of solutionism, the shift toward authentication, digital exclusion, human erasure, public corporatization, and finally, the constitutional crisis that comes from all of this.
All right, let's jump into part one, the ideology of solutionism, when technology becomes the end.
So the source material highlights this pervasive mindset called digital solutionism. Basically, it's this blind belief that technology is the ultimate, unquestioned fix for literally every complex problem we have, whether it's governance, welfare, or deep-rooted inequality. It mistakenly shrinks massive institutional and political challenges into, well, mere technical glitches. Instead of actually doing the hard work of reforming ground-level institutions, the focus just shifts to building a new app or launching a new database, treating the tech itself as an unquestionable public good. Now, as you can probably guess, this creates a massive and dangerous gap. Governments increasingly love to celebrate what the sources call administrative visibility. They boast about things like massive Ayushman Bharat health ID registrations flashing on slick digital dashboards. But the research points out that this obsession completely neglects actual welfare outcomes. It forces us to ask, are we just measuring digital success, or are we measuring whether a citizen actually received healthcare? That brings us to Section 2, Entitlement to Authentication, the Human Cost. Think about how things used to work. Historically, citizens had legal entitlements, meaning rights that were firmly guaranteed by statutory law, like the right to food. But now, we are seeing a massive shift toward technological conditionality. Your rights aren't just guaranteed by law anymore. They're entirely dependent on successful technological authentication. We're talking about matching a fingerprint, getting an OTP on your phone, or just hoping the server happens to be running that day. Which leads directly into Section 3, Digital Exclusion and Civil Death, the database versus reality. I really want you to consider the sheer gravity of a term like digital civil death. It's incredibly dark. The sources highlight some truly tragic situations, such as actual starvation deaths that happened not because a local ration shop ran out of food, but simply because a database failed to authenticate a person's existence. The system literally privileges the database over the living, breathing human standing right in front of it. If the computer says you don't exist, administratively you just don't. And for the most vulnerable people, this turns into an absolute nightmare of a maze. Just picture it. A simple fingerprint mismatch at step 1 triggers this grueling, exhausting cycle of multiple visits to banks and local offices just to get biometric corrections. The administrative burden gets completely dumped onto marginalized citizens. They're forced to lose days of hard-earned wages just to prove their own existence to a machine. Let's look at the bigger picture in Section 4, the erasure of human governance, portals over people. We're seeing this replacement happen right across the board. Traditional, human-led administration for things like food, agriculture, and healthcare is being actively, intentionally replaced by automated digital architectures. Think Aadhaar, AgriStack, or Ayushman Bharat. The problem here is pretty obvious. You simply cannot argue with or appeal to a web portal in the same way you can with a human public official. It fundamentally weakens human accountability in our governance. And this naturally leads to something called function creep. You know how it goes. A system like Aadhaar is originally pitched to the public for a very specific, limited purpose, say making targeted welfare delivery smoother. But inevitably, the scope creeps. It expands into banking, then into taxation, and eventually even into electoral processes. Before you know it, the digital identity becomes this inescapable foundational infrastructure for absolutely everything. Because of this, the source material argues that this embedded digital infrastructure quietly but massively expands state surveillance capacities. Under the convenient guise of efficient governance, we're seeing the integration of biometric databases, the long-term retention of personal records, and even the deployment of facial recognition systems. Surveillance just becomes deeply baked right into everyday administration. So with all this incredible amount of data being collected and centralized, we really have to pause and ask a pivotal question. Who truly profits from this unprecedented accumulation of citizen data? Because, spoiler alert, it's not just about governance anymore. It is very much about economics.
That takes us to part 5, corporatization of public goods, the political economy.
Take initiatives like AgriStack, for example. It's not just about helping farmers. It is a total redefinition of what data actually is. These systems transform public agricultural knowledge and citizen data into highly valuable commercial commodities. This data fuels fintech, profiling, analytics, and entirely new private digital markets. Citizens' personal information effectively becomes a massive, untapped economic asset.
What we're really looking at here amounts to a systematic corporate takeover. Private technology platforms, like EdTech in the public education space, private players entering via AgriStack, and big tech companies expanding into digital public infrastructure, are increasingly controlling sectors that were historically the strict, nonprofit domain of the welfare state. Public goods are being aggressively converted into digital commodities. And this maps perfectly onto the concept of disaster capitalism. Here's how it works. Before a crisis, democratic scrutiny of new tech is usually pretty slow and deliberate. But when a crisis hits, like demonetization or the COVID-19 pandemic, these national emergencies are utilized to bypass normal democratic debate. They lock in permanent digital expansions that stick around long after the actual crisis is over.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6, the constitutional crisis, where technology acts as the gatekeeper.
Now, these digital systems are constantly pitched as these brilliant silver bullets against corruption, but the sources argue they totally misdiagnose the actual problem. They obsessively police what's called retail corruption, hunting for duplicate beneficiaries or tiny petty leaks among the absolute poorest people. Meanwhile, they actively ignore the structural, wholesale corruption and crony capitalism that actually drives massive inequality. It's literally treating the symptoms while ignoring the disease. It all points to a really dangerous reversal engineered by the digital state. Think about it. Technology was supposed to make it easier for citizens to exercise their rights. Instead, citizens now have to rely on incredibly complex, often corporate-managed technology just to access those basic fundamental rights. Technology is no longer the facilitator. It has become the gatekeeper. And the day-to-day lived reality for millions of people is just incredibly fragile. We're talking about folks whose pension payments get entirely blocked because of a tiny fingerprint mismatch. Starvation happening because a server in a rural area goes offline. The genuine fear of being wrongly purged from voter rolls by some automated algorithm. One single technological glitch can simultaneously strip a person of their food, their money, and their vote. So I want to leave you with something to really think about in our increasingly automated world. If your constitutional right to food or work, or even democratic participation, depends entirely on a successful server connection, are they actually still rights at all? I challenge you to question where this blind digital solutionism is really taking us. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep asking the hard questions.